Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Adam. ASK is the acronym for Always Seek Knowledge. This and every other broadcast that has been published has sought to always do that, to have you, the listener, a participant, always seek knowledge, understanding some of the fundamentals of life in general and how it affects you. I'm a firm believer that life is always happening for us, not to us. And once you start to see the patterns and understand that through your seeking of knowledge, you understand more patterns and more things that are happening in your life, you'll come to the same conclusion I have, that it is happening for us and not to us. Hopefully this episode will light the spark with your understanding and maybe create that little bit of a fire in you that you begin, like myself, to start seeking more knowledge. Not saying you have to know everything, but the more you know, well, the easier I think it is to understand. In this episode, we're going from stuck to start in 7 steps. Let's begin and get started with the show. From stuck to start in 7 steps. You don't need a leap, you just need a first step. Feeling stuck isn't a flaw, it's a flag. See, it's something inside of you that is telling you you're ready for change. So when you're feeling stuck, kind of focus on that and start to feel maybe why you're feeling this way, what prompted you to feel this way, and not to assess blame, but again, to understand. Are you feeling stuck because, well, the job's kind of getting boring and you've become to have patterns in your job where it's kind of the same old same, and you realize that, well, you need to step up, or that something should be slightly different, or you'd like to add more creativity to what you do, but you're kind of just not getting there, maybe not getting recognized? Well, guess what? This is your red flag. This is your flag telling you, yourself, this is your inner feeling. It's time for change. Maybe it's time to take that leadership role. Maybe it's time to take that next level of education to excel to that next level. Or maybe it's time for you to investigate what it takes to go to that next level in your life or in your job, in your career. Again, this stuck to start in 7 steps can cover everything that you do in life. So whether it is a relationship, whether it is a position at work, whether it's just you progressing, each year we make resolutions. Well, that's great, but do you make resolutions in the middle of the year? No, you just all of a sudden feel stuck and want to do something a little different. See, we all get stuck mentally, emotionally, and sometimes creatively. The key is to recognize it, not to judge it, and see that stuck is a signal, not a sentence. I can share with you in my experience, I was feeling stuck. I was in a career for, almost 12, 15 years, and I was pretty good at it until I made a drastic change to move locations. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I was seeking change. I had a gut feeling that this was going to be a change for the better. I can share with you that change, well, I really wasn't stuck. And when I look back now, the change I was seeking was on a different level. And I want to share this with you because when you change one thing, you change everything. And there's going to be a ripple effect. Some people call it the butterfly effect. But if you change something, you've got to understand that other things like throwing a rock into a pond, it's going to create a ripple. And that ripple is going to go on, and it's going to reach every shore that is around that pond. And so you have to understand that, well, when you start making those adjustments, well, there's going to be, I don't know if I want to call it collateral damage, but there's going to be some changes. And you've got to also be prepared for making those adjustments as well. And I think part of that is once you take the first step and you start to understand that that wasn't so bad, wasn't as big as you thought, wasn't the Mount Everest you thought you had to climb. But keep in mind that there will be some other hills along this path that you're probably going to have to combat. So it may start off easy, or it may start out difficult when you're making these adjustments. But just remember that you're going to have some hills and you're going to have some valleys. You'll be going downhill for a moment, and then you'll be going uphill. Sometimes it's an easy walk, sometimes it's a struggle. But remember that you're moving. And the big thing is to get away from being stuck. And with these 7 steps, to just get into motion and get into momentum. I can share with you that kind of once you master these steps, you'll find that almost anything that you want to tackle in life can be applied to this and can make your life slightly better because, well, you kind of know the playbook. You know what steps to take, and it becomes instinctively easier to make these adjustments, as well as seeing, as we mentioned, the collateral damage that may occur, the other things, knowing that ahead of time, well, you can better prepare for them and know that just one change is going to create several other changes. And trust me when I say, the better prepared you are for those changes, the far better this whole event is going to be. Now, let me put a little caveat to this, is don't let the ripple effect all of a sudden be your paralysis that says, oh my gosh, I can't handle more than one thing. I don't want to create many things happening at the same time and have to manage all of that. No, it's going to come one at a time. But you'll find that once you adjust something, well, you're going to have to correct other things as well. And it may be some of the habits you already have in your life. To realize that if you're adjusting careers and it requires a little bit more effort and time, even during your downtime, that you may have to alleviate some of your relaxation activities while you're working on something else. So it's a little bit of sacrifice sometimes. And again, just understanding that, well, you make one move, there's other moves that will come from that and other adjustments that are certainly going to have to be made. But I did find that, well, once I made the first move, adjusted to the second move, understood the third move, and actually it brought some clarity to my life to understand that, well, this position I was in, this career, suited me for a moment. But it wasn't, I don't think, completely meant to be. And that was part of the difficulty I found, and then I rationalized, is why things just didn't pan out. It was good for a moment, but then it wasn't. And I think accepting that, which did take some time, I am not perfect, but accepting that and understanding that, not fighting that particular step forward, but to step aside and sort of seek the other path, well, it turned out several years later to be the best decision I could have made. Not only did that next decision allow me to learn that much more about something that I didn't know, it also allowed me to work during a trying time in our world and economy, and it just gave me a good opportunity to continue kind of what I was already doing prior to having a different career. So it kind of brought me full circle. It was a tough way to learn something, but at the end of the day, I wasn't stuck. I was moving. And you'll find that, again, going back to these peripheral moves that are going to occur from one movement happening, let me put it another way. If you've had a house and you've changed the carpet, what's the next thing you want to do? You want to change the drapes. And then all of a sudden you change the drapes and realize, well, that particular shade of carpet and drapes, well, doesn't quite match the furniture anymore. So now you're inclined to change your furniture. And before you know it, you've had to change the entire room, may even have changed your entire house. See what I'm saying? One movement or one idea can all of a sudden ripple effect and create other moves and ideas to take place. So I guess I'm sharing that with you today to say, don't be afraid to make that first step for the ripple effect that it can occur, because you'll find all of a sudden it changed your environment, if you will, changed this room that you were living in your home. And now all of a sudden you have a different room, and maybe it creates a different attitude. Maybe it sparks creativity. Maybe it, dare I say, you find and discover that design and detail is something that you like and enjoy doing, and now all of a sudden you're doing that for a living, both commercially and or privately. You just don't know what's going to happen, but I can certainly say that if you're standing still and not doing anything, you're not going to know about any of this. And it certainly does not follow the Ask Adam army of always seeking knowledge. So step out and start again. You never know where it's going to lead. What I can promise you is that in this episode, you'll walk away with a 7-step framework, a move from frozen to flowing, actionable, encouraging, and doable, no matter where you're at, or how you would apply this. Again, whether it be your work function, whether it be a relationship, or maybe even your long-term career. There's always somewhere, a direction any of us can be going into. And change, well, it's not always easy, it's not always comfortable, but it's always good. I can assure you. At the end of the day, at the end of several years, when you look back and say, that change was the best thing that I could have done. I think very rarely would you ever say that change was bad, unless it ultimately was maybe the wrong decision for the wrong reasons. And I can assure you that your gut probably through that process was telling you, stop, don't do it. And even though it was very uncomfortable and you suffered through internal discomfort, whatever those side effects were, maybe having issues with your immune system, maybe having some side effects with your body and whatnot, that was your gut telling you what you were doing wasn't great and telling you to stop, but you continued through all that discomfort, and you're a soldier for doing it, that you made a decision that probably wasn't for your best interest. I guess I'm just saying that to say that you'll know when the decisions are going to be bad. It's what we call the gut feeling, and that's why it's there. So part one, let's look at why we get stuck. Decision fatigue is certainly first on the list. Looking at too many of the hows and whys and whatnot can really get tiresome. And you don't have to focus on that. Just focus on one and make that decision. Again, you don't have to decide to change the entire room. Live with it for a moment. You change the carpet, live with it for a moment. Get some ideas. You don't have to do it right away, and I can certainly share with you, you don't have to do it all at once. Many of us find ourselves stuck because of fear of failure, or even possibly the small percentage of us that are just having that fear of success. That what if this thing does work out? Then what do you do? You know, so many of us think, well, if I'm not good at it, then it'll just fall apart and I will be disappointed. Yeah, what if you are good at it? And what if it goes radically well and all of a sudden you're successful? Can you handle that as well? Well, that's a lot of times why we get stuck. It's this fear of failure or success. And I'm not really sure why there should be a fear at all. And of course, I think fear comes from just not knowing. But if you connect yourself with those who have taken the path before you, maybe even a mentor, they can certainly guide you to reduce those fears by sharing with you what it looks like a few steps ahead. So you know what's going on there. You're just learning how to get there. You do have to hold your own map, by the way. Someone will guide you, but you do have to carry your own map because they're not always going to be there. And you kind of want to have your own compass as well, because you always want to know where true north is. You always want to know what is the best direction for you. Because to ask someone what the best direction for you is, well, they're not going to give you a true answer because they're going to give you either bias based on your friendship, or it's most likely leaning towards, well, what they would like and what they would want. So there's a little bit of responsibility for us as individuals to maintain not only carrying the map, but a compass as well. You know, number three, the third reason that people get stuck is perfectionism. Always believing that, well, it has to be perfect in order for it to work. And it doesn't. And I can tell you it's going to get messy. And if it starts out nice, well, it's going to get messy through the middle or maybe towards the end. But to some degree, you're going to have a little messy. And that's okay. It's kind of part of the learning curve where you're learning things, utilizing things, and it gets a little busy. But don't let it keep you stuck. The fourth reason that, well, people find themselves being stuck is past disappointment. Thinking back at when, well, something we tried before didn't quite work. So why try it again? Well, that was then, and this is now. And you're also coming from a point of learning from that activity or that experience. And now you're bringing some knowledge to this experience. So you can't really measure your past efforts and chalk them up, even if they were disappointing, to say the next one is surely going to be disappointing as well. It's just not true. The fifth most common reason that people are stuck is the lack of clarity. And I can tell you the lack of clarity, meaning your goals. I think it was Simon Sinek that said, know your why. That's certainly important as compared to clarity. If you know your why, well, that straightens up clarity. But understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. What is this change that you want to do? Because once you eliminate clarity, well, now you can move into action. But if you're not clear on what you want and what you're doing and where you're going with it, well, that is going to always equal a lack of action because you're just not going to move forward. You have to know why you're going and you have to know where you're going. Part two, the 7 steps. Let's get into starting again. Let's get into this big idea. First, pause with purpose. Don't push through. Pause and breathe and kind of live with this idea of the thing you want to do, the change that you want to occur. And I'm not saying you need to spend too much time in this place, but I think this first step is where you gain the most clarity. is you see what you want to do, you understand why you want to do it, and you review the several steps it's going to take in order to do it, preferably from a coach or a mentor who has already done what you seek to do. I'll give you a little bit of a bonus. One of the things that helped me out is I always ask, what is this moment asking me to pay attention to? That usually gave me some clarity to better understand what direction I was going into, what I needed to focus on more, and that usually propelled me forward. For instance, when I was looking into getting into real estate, I learned probably in the first 2 months so much more than I needed to know, so much more beyond the test and the measurement of the regulations, but just catapulted me into the sales basket. Not to be salesy, but to just understand the fundamentals of sales at large. And that's what I paid attention to, was the sales aspect. And once that foundation was set, well, it seemed like so many other things came into play because it was always back to that foundation. Now, while you're discovering purpose, the next thing you want to do is name what's true. You want to write down your current thoughts, what you believe, what you understand about what it is you're getting into. As I mentioned, you can apply this with anything. One of the things I found, this is relationships, was journaling. And I remember several journal entries where I just found driven and focused, right? What am I paying attention to? Well, I found that I really wasn't specific with who I wanted in my life. And in several journal entries, I just focused on that. What were the attributes about this person that were going to make them the perfect partner? And I wrote them down. Like I said, in several entries. As it came to me, I wrote them down. This is what I was to pay attention to. I can tell you that the person who is in my life, well, they're pretty much on those 3 pages to a T. Yeah, I forgot a couple few things, but we all make mistakes. They're not big flaws in this particular individual, but I share that with you because it does ring true. Is what you write, you invite. So be specific, have details. And if it's something quirky that you are looking for, relationship speaking, write it down. Because there is that person out there that has that quirk as well as all the other attributes that you wish to find in a partner. They're out there and they will find you. The same thing with a career. You want to adjust your career. You want to change jobs. If you want to level up in your life, write that down. Write down your goals, your current thoughts. Name what is true. This helped me as well to get honest without judgment. I did that for my business. I said I wanted a business. I wrote it down. I said, this is how I want my business to be. There was a few things I left out on that entry as well, which gave me some challenges through the process. So again, what we write, we invite. I will also add that maybe what we didn't write, well, that's still going to show up. And we weren't prepared for it. At least I wasn't. But by getting honest, no judgment, you're going to put down that which is most important to you. And it's also going to get you thinking of, well, how would you handle having such a thing? And by sort of writing that out, you may realize, wow, that's kind of silly to say, or that's even sillier to expect, or that's just kind of obnoxious that someone would want to do that for you. And that being the case, you might want to adjust a little bit of what you invite and maybe re-script it a little bit differently or refine it. This takes us into step 3, which is shift the story. Because while you're getting honest and while you're not judging, you're going to find that things are bubbling up to the surface, the reality of your life. And I think you'll find yourself asking, what else could be true? This will allow you to reframe that fear into fuel by shifting the story. What is your story now? And if your story is of woe and I can't get anywhere and I'm stuck in this position and nobody recognizes my hard work, well, again, just as what you write, you invite, I am a firm believer that what you say, you invite as well. And it can become true. So shift your story to what else could be true? What opportunities are available for you? Who are people that you could be talking to? And instead of having a story of woe and saying, well, I just don't ever get recognized, say I'm finally at a point in my career where I want to be recognized. So who or what do I need to do in order to be recognized, to stand out? Shift your story. Again, to a much more positive outlook, and you'll find that what you write and what you speak will come to you through the invitation that you've given it. You know, speak, it will also give authority to it becoming something. And you'll find that the more you say something and the more you act like that person, before you know it, you become that person in a relationship, maybe a leadership role, maybe an elevated role, maybe an adjustment in your career. You're going to reframe that fear into fuel because you're already there in your mind and in your speak, the way you're saying things and how you're acting. So when you get there, well, you realize there was nothing to be afraid of. And quite frankly, that journey was honestly a non event. But none of that's going to take place until you shift your story. Number 4, pick one focus. Choose one area to move in. As I said, don't try to change the whole room. Start with the carpet, start with the drapes, maybe start with the furniture to start giving you the idea of, what you're going to do. This also allows room for clarity by it just being a single event. Because clarity does, well, honestly, it beats complexity. If you're trying to do everything at once, well, it's going to get slightly chaotic. Just as I mentioned with the room example. Not sure what type of house you live in, but try taking all that furniture, carpet, and whatnot and moving it into another room of your house. You'll find it's not very easy. But if you do small steps each time, you'll realize that you're not taking your space out of commission, you're merely just adjusting it. Say, moving the furniture around, if you will, might be a good place to start. Again, shifting the story, seeing what it looks like, feeling what that room is like with the furniture adjusted, and realizing that, well, maybe that's all you needed for the first step. And then you progress to realizing that, well, at this location of this furniture, well, I kind of see what I would want as far as the carpet or maybe the drapes. Maybe you find a design where you want the window open now because the position of the chairs allow you to look out a beautiful window. Whereas before, maybe the window was towards your back. But start somewhere. Pick one thing and focus. Number 5 is define the micro move. As you were thinking about in step 1 and getting that clarity, you should have identified at least one area to move in. And that one area, maybe it's the smallest, that's the one you can act on. Maybe it doesn't take as much as you think for that one action. Maybe it's something you can do immediately in 24 hours, say. But take that first step. Maybe it's the inexpensive step. If the financial concern is what you're looking at for this particular move or adjustment in your life. What's the least expensive action that can be taken in the shortest period of time? Again, we're talking a 24-hour window. So you really don't have time to figure out financial things. It's what is the smallest, most actionable step that you can take. Define that micro move. And of course, take it immediately. And it may be a move that creates the habit that you're going to make that move continuously, day in and day out, week in and week out, month to month. And before you know it, you've gone through an entire year with making that one step. And then finding just after a few weeks or a few months, the drastic change that that one step created. Maybe it's getting out of bed a little earlier and doing some type of an activity. Maybe it's adding something to your day that you thought was already too busy. Again, what's a small action that you can take in the next 24 hours that aligns with your clarity and will keep you slightly focused? Because remember, we still have another direction to go into. Number 6, anchor in identity. One of the phrases I appreciate is, I'm the kind of person who. Who are you? Again, this comes from those previous steps of clarity versus complexity. And these 7 steps do compound on each other, as you will see. So as you start identifying yourself as this person, say it's an elevation in leadership, see yourself there. Start acting the way they do. Start mimicking those that are already in that role with the language, the concerns, the mannerisms. Because you're going to be there. You better get started now, because pretty soon you are going to be there. And if you haven't already sort of practiced what you're going to play, well, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you. So while you have this spare time, while you've got the clarity, while you're getting yourself ready for, say, the big event, start by being that person and anchor in that identity. This will align action with who you want to be and not how you feel. You'll also find that it will shed some of that concern of, well, if you're focused on being that person, you're not going to be thinking I'm not worthy. You're not going to be combating imposter syndrome because you're just acting that part. You're already doing it. Seven is to track and celebrate your motion. Each one of these moves, I want you to document. Each one of the learning lessons that you've acquired, I want you to jot down in a journal. I want to remind you that you don't want to just look for the big wins, but record some of the events through the process. and celebrate the momentum from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, from 3 to 4. And not just focus on when will I be at 10, work on the steps from 1 to 9. You'll get to 10. I'm very certain of that. But you do have to anchor in identity, and it helps to track and celebrate those wins. All bet small, a win's a win. Nobody ever looks back and says, how did the W get on the scoreboard? It just happened. It was the collaborative effort of the team that got you the win. Very few times is it ever recognized the details of that win or the struggles of that win, because they're always going to be there. But the recording, most all the time, is whether it was a win or a loss. So always be winning. Part 3, real talk. Stuck happens. And just because you've combated it once, well, you're going to combat it again. In fact, you're going to combat it several times in your life. Like I said, with your career, with your relationships, and even with your daily job function. Heck, maybe even where you live. I can assure you that you'll get stuck again, but now you'll know better how to respond. Like I said earlier, once you utilize the 7 steps, they'll become habitual, and you'll just automatically go into that mode of step 3, and then automatically into step 4. Or maybe you've gotten so good you step 4 and can go right into 5 because you've effectively mastered these steps. So just to bring this back around full circle, you want to pause. You want to name what it is that you want. You want to begin to shift in the direction of what you want. You want to focus slightly a little bit more than anything else. You want to focus on this with every spare opportunity you have. You want to conduct micro moves. You want to identify that you're already in this position, already playing this role, already being with this person. And then you're going to pat yourself on the back and celebrate, because each small step is a win, but they create massive momentum over time. We often underestimate or overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what is possible in 10. I remember reading that in a book, and it was very profound, that it only begins with one step, one activity, one idea that builds more ideas, that compounds those ideas into another function. So start with that small step today that will create massive momentum in your life. I invite you to download from Stuck to Start Tracker the worksheet. Choose one of the 7 steps to act on today. If you do this, I would be greatly thankful if you would tag at Ask Adam Live with the hashtag from Stuck to Start and share your micro win with us and your social group. Because as I am very anxious to applaud for you, I know your friends and family are equally just waiting to applaud your next win. Start small, start shaky, start anyway. The shift begins the moment you do. So take that idea, start writing it down, acting like you're the one in charge of it and doing it, and go out with the rest of us and make it a great day. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ask Adam Live.